We are going to now look at two countries or two regions. One is Asia Pacific, but mainly Southeast Asia, anchored in Thailand. And then we're going to turn to the Middle East, looking at Dubai and some of the countries in North Africa, as well as Central Asia when we get to our second speaker. So we're calling these Report from the Field. And the first report's coming out of Bangkok from Dave Nardone. Dave is a double husky. He got his undergraduate degree from the business school in 1979, and then his MBA in 1982. And after working in the US for a few years, he's one of the people who moved very soon in his career to Asia. He spent some time in Hong Kong working in the computer industry. And then for the last 23 years, he's been with this Thai company called Hemraj. And what Hemraj does is develop industrial estates, and I think you see some of the pictures up there. And in these industrial estates, companies, including foreign investors like Ford or GM or Suzuki or Mazda, when they want to build a factory in Thailand to assemble cars or make auto parts or whatever, they would locate it inside these industrial parks. And the 8 industrial parks run by Hemraj have collectively estimated to have brought $26 billion worth of investment in Thailand. So it's a very substantial investment, and they're facilitating, this company is facilitating that kind of investment. When Dave took over the company, it had lots of problems. He's since turned it around. It's doing extremely well. He's also active in Bangkok in the AmCham, the American Chamber of Commerce, and he has held various senior positions within the AmCham. And very importantly, from our perspective, my perspective, is that he's on the board of the Center for Emerging Markets, and he's also one of our benefactors. In fact, our seminar series called the Nardone Seminar series is made possible by a gift from Dave Nardone. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Dave. I don't know if Dave can hear us. I think he can. I hope and pray he can.
Yeah, I can. Sure.
All right. Okay. So over to you, Dave.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Ravi, and good morning, everyone. Very humbled also to follow Dr. Nariman this morning. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. This is actually the only photo I have. This is one of our industrial estates where Professor Ravi visited with me. It's called Eastern Seaboard Industrial Estate. This is what we call the Detroit of the East, and it's about 2,800 hectares. On the right-hand side is a Ford Mazda plant, luckily at full capacity, producing mostly pickup trucks. And on the left-hand side is a General Motors facility. What I'll do is I'll talk a little bit about our company briefly, and then some of the environment that we're in Thailand first. Okay, our company, we're industrial developers, established in '88. We're doing industrial estates, utility, power, and some property business. We're primarily in Thailand. We have 8 industrial locations, about 7,200 hectares. Automotive's a big part of our business. We have 233 automotive companies, so we have all the major ones that have selected Thailand as a base, like Ford, Mazda, BM, Suzuki, SAIC. SAIC is a recent one, and basically all the tier 1 suppliers. So over our history, we have about 1,000 contracts. This also has led us to be a large utility producer. So we're our own water company, wastewater company. And since the mid-90s, we've had joint ventures on power business. We have 12 projects, 6 under construction, about 2,500 megawatts. And to add more value, we're doing industrial property also. So 850,000 square meters of factories and logistics parks. Our asset base is just under 1 million US. We were listed, but early this year, we delisted our company after an acquisition by another property developer, where our original shareholders, one particularly was getting a little bit older and decided to sell his shares. Of course, the context here for us in Thailand, everyone's trying to take advantage of the ASEAN promise and the growth and the 625 million people in the region, with 2015 over 200 billion of investment and a GDP growth rate of 4.6% in 2015. In Thailand, we've been little bit underperforming. Our growth last year just 2.8%, and we've been stuck, have been having moving up competitiveness, but really stuck a little bit on a lot of the measurements that are typically used, like uh, World Economic Forum or Ease of Doing Business or Human Development Index, IMD. And the size of the economy is about 390 billion right now. And that compares reasonably favorable in terms of the region. Indonesia is slightly lagging on the World Economic Forum Index, and Vietnam and other economies a little bit behind, but rapidly catching up. The country manufacturing competitiveness, we find this an interesting one that's published every 3 years, and Thailand is deteriorated slightly, ranked number 14 right now, and Vietnam 18 flat, Indonesia slightly lower. However, if you look at the next 5 years, the prospect, well, India will go from number 11 to number 5, and Thailand would remain at about 14. And in fact, Vietnam would move up to number 12 and Indonesia to number 15. So in fact, our neighboring countries are making rapid improvements in many of these type of measurements, like integration of supplier network and infrastructure and such. And Thailand has really underperformed a little bit the last years. Free trade agreements, Thailand signed a lot of them, but there's been less activity, particularly with the military government that we've had. So the effective ones are with Japan, with Australia. The Thai EU agreement has been stalled, not much action. And then the new ones that are coming up, of course, TPP is huge and in the media in all kinds of positions every day. And then the RCEP, which would be the inclusion of China and some other economies not included in TPP potential. Now, for the business sectors, of course, they're heavily for TPP, and particularly in automotive and electronic, chemical industry, three of the more successful industries for Thailand, and some integration on textile business, although the lower end textile business has long left from Thailand already. Tax rates in the region and ASEAN have mostly been reduced. Thailand has reduced from 30% to 20% the last few years, and Vietnam in 2016 reduced their tax rate to 20%. So really only Philippines is lagging in terms of the aggressiveness on being more competitive with taxes in the region. Automotive production is really important in Thailand. For production, this year is projected about 1.9 million units, and the next 5 years, about 2.45 million units. However, Thailand has really slipped. The domestic economy is flat and had a surge and then really collapsed in terms of automotive production. But for production, still leads the region, and for consumption, Indonesia is first. But this was a policy of the government in 2012 and 13 to stimulate demand, and what they call the EcoCar 1. And there's an EcoCar 2 program that's much more modest, luckily. Domestic sales here had spiked to 1.3 million units in 2012 and 13, but in fact have been flat and probably be down slightly this year with an increase in excise tax to just 700,000 units. And export market equally has been showing some of the same trade turmoil that has been talked about, with very little growth and some projection from our friends at IHS going forward. However, exports are important for Thailand. It's 15% of total exports for automotive, and we have managed to have a 12% growth over the last 5 years, although 2015 has been much lower. The other interesting thing for here compared to the rest of the market is that the exports are the more diverse market, Middle East being 26%, which has had some problems, and Asia, including ASEAN, 24%, and a small amount of participation in North America, Central and South America, and Europe also. So that's been one of our bright stars in terms of strategic industry for Thailand. And for auto parts ranking, Thailand ranks number 13, so reasonable positioning, but significantly behind, some of the larger economies like Japan and China, South Korea, other neighboring economies. Let's talk about the slowdown in trade, and certainly we've seen that in Thailand. So on exports, Thailand is highly dependent on the US market, China market, and Japan market. And there's a recent movement to emphasize the neighboring countries in the border trade, what we call the CLMV plus Malaysia. Yet in 2015, that's only 15% of Thailand's exports. That value is about 214 billion US. For import market, again, we've had reductions 6.8% in 2015. And the imports from neighboring countries, as you expect, is much less from the CLMV market. And Malaysia is the main neighbor market, and just 10.7% of total imports. Thailand has an emphasis on the special economic zones, the neighboring countries. So Thailand has a promotion in 2015 and early 2016 to basically promote the border trade. And one was to do special economic zones. And the idea is to get over some of the constraints with the lack of availability of labor and preserve some of the sunset industries. But that really hasn't been successful. And you see the numbers are not that significant. And even some of the trade that's going to Malaysia reflects people like Western Digital and Seagate trucking product to Singapore on hard drives that are completed. So they've sort of come back to what their promotion has been and what has been successful up to 2 years ago, and that's the automotive and the parts cluster, as well as electronics, telecommunications, petrochemical and such, and trying to get more value add out of agro industry, which is 30% of employment, but just in fact 9% of GDP. And trying to look at the next curve for them in terms of participating in some of the aviation or robotics or biofuel, other types of industry that give a brighter future. One really good sign is that Thai companies, in fact, have been aggressive in this time in the region. So some of the leading players like PTT Group and Siam Cement Group, Central, PCC, have been very aggressive in terms of acquisitions in the region and expanding within ASEAN and elsewhere in Asia and in other markets. So just reflecting a little bit on some of the strengths in Thailand, there is a reasonable market size, consumption. We do have the AEC trading and some level of free trade agreements. And for hospital and tourism is booming and really unable to be contained with the infrastructure we have at the Bangkok airports today. And costs are reasonable and competitive, but maybe not, growing in a way in terms of productivity. Location for trade is well positioned within the CLMV countries. Infrastructure is pretty good. Electricity we take for granted. There's lots of generation and transmission and communications, and the port is in the top 25 in the world. There's well-established industrial estates, certainly including our own. And luckily, we've been able to play all off on the manufacturing clusters that we have created in terms of automotive, particularly with a high level of integration and the OEMs using multiple suppliers and really giving us a competitive advantage and a head start with Indonesia and certainly with Vietnam and other markets that are coming up very quickly. Outward investment is as strong as I mentioned. And we take for granted that the financial markets are relatively mature. We can borrow at competitive rates with developed economies. And for manufacturers, environmental and industrial standards are really important, and they're pretty well enforced in Thailand for the most part. Now, of course, we do have challenges, and some of these challenges are immediate. That much of Southeast Asia, the northern part of Thailand, is suffering from a severe drought, which has impacted the purchasing power and the debt and really the local economy severely. And we've been coupled with low commodity prices. So although we benefited from low oil prices, we really haven't seen that benefit flow through the economy. And the weak export market. And the other thing, since the ouster of the Prime Minister Thaksin 10 years ago, we really missed 10 years of infrastructure investment. The government had been replacing that with subsidized rice prices and warehousing the rice. And the military government came back in 2 years ago. And it doesn't look like they're ready to leave anytime soon. And then there's also a succession issue in terms of the king is 89 and his health has been deteriorating. And longer term issues, hopefully the military is a shorter term issue, but longer term ones have been the education in terms of higher education, technical skills, the investment in technology and science innovation, getting more value add from agriculture, which is a new initiative that the government's pushing with Japan and others helping, and the service liberalization and things like intellectual property, even some of the rights in terms of hiring foreigners, this type of thing. And the demographics are really against Thailand in terms of an aging population in a country which in general doesn't really want foreign workers. They prefer they stay at the borders. And logistics costs in Thailand are okay, but the physical connectivity and the road networks and connecting to the neighboring countries still needs a lot of improvement. And there's competition. Vietnam, particularly, and Indonesia, we see somewhat in the automotive sector. So a few other things in Thailand that I think are unique benefits is that a foreign company could be 100% in manufacturing and they can have freehold land. Much of Asia is leasehold, and they have tax incentives, not really cash incentives. And also for permits in terms of using the land, construction, operating, it's one stop and it's much easier compared to our customers' experience in India and many other markets. Now, so my whole career here has been, I think, volatility for 20 years or so. I've seen maybe 10 governments. So what have we been doing since the mid 90s? Basically, we're in a high margin business, but very cyclical. So we've been developing industry clusters, automotive, chemical, and others. And about a 1/3 of our business is repeat customer expansion. So it's not dependent on new people locating to Thailand in a time where there may be some uncertainty. We expanding in ASEAN. We have a Lao hydropower project. We have one distribution project in Indonesia, and for ourselves on the industrial estate side, Vietnam is our priority. And we've been a little bit lucky too with some strategic investment. For instance, 3 years ago, Mazda came in and they have a transmission plant that they finished. And those transmissions, the first ones outside of Japan, they're supplying the China market and also Mexico for the United States market. And last year we won the business with Aisin. Aisin is part of the Toyota Group, and also transmission. So they're starting at 120,000 units and go to 1 million units eventually, just for the region. And they were able to use the Mazda suppliers from Hiroshima in terms of aluminum, so let us leverage again some of our customer base. We see a significant amount of Chinese investment in Thailand. Last year, we won the business for Shanghai Automotive with a local company, CP Group, with a very ambitious plan to start producing MGs in Thailand. So right now, they're renting 42,000 square meters from us, and perhaps towards the end of the year, we'll start construction on a plant to serve the non-China market with MG product. And there's many other examples of this from China, particularly tire companies coming to Thailand because of quotas, in Europe if you're producing in China. We've been developing power plants further. So we have two partners. One is NG, it's the Suez Group. We've been partnering with them since 1995. We have a coal power plant that's been running for about 3 years, 660 megawatts, where we have 35% shareholding. That's really stabilized our earnings. And a local company, Gulf with Mitsui, we have 6 cogeneration gas plants under construction that are inside of our industrial estates. They supply the grid and then also private power and small amount of steam and chilled water. And we've been trying to expand our waste to energy renewal type of business. We're a water company, wastewater company, increasingly looking at other type of industrial services that we can have to leverage our customer base and to use rental factories to just build recurring income. Although we are selling some of these to real estate investment trust today, our parent company was a little bit leveraged on the acquisition, and we're trying to help deleverage the parent company. 2015, despite the strife in the region, we have 50% recurring revenue and 70% recurring income and record profit. So this is pretty much my career here. So in 1995, our sales were about 85 million US, and we made a profit of 22 million. And return on equity and return on assets were quite good. And asset base of the company was 289 million. And of course, the 1997 crisis, inspired by Thailand, the currency went from 25 to about 58 at the peak. So our sales in 1998 dropped about 80%, and we made a paper profit because the currency was more favorable than 1997. But basically, we had a really damaged balance sheet and really severe time then. Interest rates spiked to 16%, and really difficult to work our way back over the next 5 years. In 2009, I mean, luckily that was someone else's crisis. Our sales fell 45%, but this is the year of cash for clunkers and all the capital goods market just basically collapsing. So our revenue fell about 45% to 62 million. But we are still profitable and we're pretty comfortable compared to our experience in 1998 because of a broader revenue mix. And then in 2015, our sales were 275 million. Our profit before translation loss was about 110 million US, and we were doing 22% return on equity, or a little bit better, excluding the currency, and 10% return on assets. And we're an asset-based type of business with power plants and more capital intensive. So our asset was just under 1 billion US. So a little bit more comfortable and a broader revenue base in terms of where it's coming from, even though we're a little bit overexposed to the Thailand market. That's about it. I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Any questions? Yes. Just identify yourself so Dave knows who's asking.
Hi, my name is Jared. I run an economic development consulting company in Malaysia. My question is about how integrated Hemorrhage is with the Investment Development Authority of Thailand, how integrated you are with the specific state plans or provincial plans in the areas that you guys work. Just how integrated are you with the government projects?
Okay, sure. For the state plans, so for us, for the provinces, the province, in general, they don't have that much independence and funding. So there it's mainly on infrastructure provision that we're working with them on road improvements in different areas. But we're highly integrated with the Board of Investment in terms of the industry coming in, type of promotion activity, but other agencies like JETRO and other ones. And then particularly now with the current Deputy Prime Minister, who was on our board about 22 years ago, then in fact we're working with him on ideas to kind of go back to the basics. What has been working before in terms of automotive and other industries that are looking at aerospace and other types of capability for Thailand. So there's a good dialogue with the government and the private sector, and we're a Thai company. Pretty much everyone except me is Thai, and we have those type of connections and that type of access to people.
Dave, can you elaborate on how you function in that environment? You're an American, and you're surrounded by Thai employees and Thai owners, and you've been there 23 years. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, that's why I have to be an active member at the American Chamber also. But sometimes it just gives you a different perspective. It's no grand theme. I think other people could, do as good a job or better. It just happened to be that I knew the owner and the business was turning more international. And I had a background when I got out of Northeastern at Data General Computers in finance and manufacturing. And I used to be the guy looking for industrial sites, and property is a financial business. And it just worked out. And then, people accepted that my Thai language is terrible and it's probably never going to improve, and ended up working out pretty well. And I've got a lot of really great people I've worked with and really good friends in the Thai community.
Now, I imagine that in this line of business, you have to have close relationships with regulators and government authorities. Do you do that yourself, or do your partners do, your owners do that? Who handles that?
Yeah, not much. This is where we ask the shareholders to get involved, particularly if it's lobbying for something significant or public policy. So I have senior Thai people that are doing this that would have a better relationship with people at EGAT or the electricity distributor PEA if we're having problems on the dependability of distribution of power, these type of things. They can do that much easier than me. And I attend some of those events. Like tomorrow, I'm at a a meeting at the Navy base in terms of what they want to do in terms of commercialization, or they have some ideas that this could be the aviation and repair hub for Thailand. So I'm with the group, but I think those type of meetings are difficult for me, frankly, because of the language, and normally the Thai shareholders will take the lead on that.
Any other questions? I have one more I can ask for while you come up with maybe other things you'd like to explore. Um, how do you, as a public company, as I understand it, right? You are
Yeah.
a listed company.
We were, but we delisted in March of this year because the tender offer, the shareholders owned 92.5%, and they made a second offer at 98.5%. So we delisted. We're concentrating on the parent company. So I'm a vice chairman now at the parent company and at Hemrod also.
Got
And
it.
we intend to list our power and utility company, though, sometime next year, slightly as a way to deleverage and also concentrate on that business in a bigger way.
So when you were listed, which was until recently, I guess, how
Yeah.
did you ride these waves of ups and downs, and how do the or you actually find yourself dealing with the same tension we find in the U.S. short term versus long term when you're a listed company, or were you able to pursue a coherent long term strategy and ignore the ups and downs that happen from year to year?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing on Thai companies, most of them are pretty closely held. And part of that is to have the leverage with the local authorities to do things. So I think when the acquisition happened, our shareholders were referenced at 22% or something, but typically the Thai shareholders are much larger. So they would take a longer term perspective. So in 2009, when our profit dropped, well, our dividend dropped by about 60%, but everyone was happy to have a small dividend and just look at a long term perspective. And they had been the original founders, and when they sold out basically about 28 years or so. So they had a much longer perspective. I didn't feel under any particular short term pressure on a quarterly basis, and particularly the industrial part of our business was lumpy. Until we had the power plants running, we really couldn't stabilize that earnings very well. And now the power is running in a big way. It's half of our earnings. We have less of that problem.
To clarify, how much did this ownership group, how much of the company did they own?
Well, officially 22%. That's all I can say.
Okay. All right. Anybody else have any questions? Yeah.
Looking at your balance sheets, you have a 44. You recorded a 44% net income this past year, and you steadily had about 30% or so. That's
Yeah.
extraordinary by any standards. So my question is that the norm? How do the other companies do in Thailand as a benchmark?
No. Yeah, for our sector, we're about 50% higher sales and 50% higher profit, and I think we compare any better with anyone in our sector. The numbers are a little bit misleading because in the power business, I have minority positions, so we don't have the debt on our balance sheet, but it's non-recourse project financing anyways, because we're primarily selling to the grid, and so we're only reflecting the profit from that business. So last year that was about 1.4 billion. So a decent amount of our total profit is about 40% of our total profit. But on a gross margin basis, our industrial state gross margin, if I normalize for some odd things, it's basically 45%. So it's a high margin business, but it's cyclical.
Hi, Dave. Chris Robertson from Northeastern. My question is
Chris.
kind of building on what Ravi asked you before. I know you track and interact with the Thai government. How important is it for you to monitor and track political and economic trends with the neighboring countries in the region?
Yeah, it's really important. And I felt in 1997, frankly, I didn't have the market intelligence that was really needed. That I'm not sure if we had the mechanism, but whether to hedge some of our exposure. Many of the Thai companies in those days had dollar loans. We had a euro convertible 3.5% loan at a time when interest rates were in double digits. So it's hugely important, and we're beefing up that whole business intelligence part of our business. Particularly, we're trying to expand in Vietnam, and that's more complicated. It's a place where we don't really have the political know-how or know-who that we have in Thailand that we take routinely. So there's a lot of minefields, I think, when you go into other markets.
Time for maybe one more final question. Anybody? Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your expansion plans in Vietnam and outside Thailand? Because it looks like Thailand itself is not growing as fast as it used to, but you're in a terrific neighborhood because all your neighbors are growing at 4, 5, 6% or even higher. So it would seem logical that you
So
would take.
we're mainly concentrating on CLMV market in Indonesia. So in Indonesia, our parent company that's doing logistics distribution, build-to-suit buildings, we're able to go in with a very large distribution center for a consumer good company. So to go in with less risk, and also land acquisition there is both expensive and hard to get. When we've been looking at Cambodia market, poking around at Myanmar is probably too early for us, although there's a small amount of industrial activity. And Cambodia, there's also a small market, but land's expensive too. And we don't feel we can have a secondary brand that's not doing proper wastewater treatment, and we have to bring our whole product line if we go to those countries. Vietnam's the most interesting one. So I'm in Vietnam once or twice a month right now, and we're looking at a large project. If you read the Vietnam news, it was in the Vietnam news, but we haven't really announced it here. We've been looking at projects there for 2 to 3 years, both in the south that are more oriented to heavy industries, but much more difficult to do, and then in the north. And I think you'll see something from us shortly, but it'll be expansion in a very big way.
And given the nature of your business, where I would think relationship with local actors and government officials and policymakers is very important. How do you transfer that advantage or create that advantage when you go into a new country like Vietnam?
Yeah, so for Vietnam, on the first project we're looking at, we have an MOU with a local partner, and we believe they have some strategic and political capability that they can help us on that project and perhaps leverage to some other projects. Although our scope is related to the first project first to see how we make out. But so far, the signs are really encouraging in terms of their capability and the synergy between the groups.
Okay, well, Dave, thank you so much. I know it's almost 10 p.m. your time, and you've been staying up to talk to us. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch in the next few days. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thank you.